I try to not cover controversial topics because there's enough divisions in the world. I don't want to add to it anymore. But this is business related. I mean, remote work specifically, it's unavoidable, I think. And I think it's a very important topic, especially this day and age. I saw a note, and what prompted me to do this episode is I saw a note on LinkedIn. Somebody posted they were upset because the recruiter didn't mention that it was in office work until later stage of the interview process. Um, I mean, and then the recruiters were, they were lying to them or hiding from them. Maybe it's true. I don't know. But the fact that this is still remote work is still a debate, prompted me to do this episode, and I think it'll be good to discuss it and see what my thoughts are. And this is coming from a guy that I'm very people oriented. I love face to face. I mean, like that's a huge interculture. So coming from a people oriented leader, believes in psychology, yeah, believes that there's a huge a large part of the communication is the body language and so on and so forth. So I get it, right? It's super, super important. Having said that, I think I thought I share my perspective of where I'm coming from. I've been doing this for a long time, what I have learned throughout the years and what conclusions I've came up with. So, by the way, the assumption here is obviously you're not a hardware company or some other requirements that physical presence is absolutely necessary. So keep that in mind. And I'm focused heavily on the software technology side. Either way, I hope it helps. Let's get started. First, stop worrying about what Google's doing, Apple's doing, Meta's, and so on and so forth. You're not Apple, you're not Google, you're not any of those things. They're in a very different situation. There's a massive company. I mean, even if you're as half as big. But the point is, we need to stop following the herd, right? That's a herd mentality. Because there's a new research, and the Google said this, it's an open office now, and it's a closed office. Oh, it's just back and forth. The question is not whether you should support remote work or not. The question is, does it make sense for me and for my business? I mean, that's the real ultimately that's the real question that you have to be asking yourself. Let me explain why to remote work or not is the wrong question, right? Okay, so what's the right question? And here's what you need to ask yourself. So let's assume for a second you believe in office and in face to face, and so you're going to require 5 days a week or 3 days a week, whatever the case is, what you want is. But you're heavily towards the in office. So the questions you have to ask yourself is: are you okay with limiting yourself to a smaller talent pool, roughly 1000x, I would say, right? Beyond just your zip code, right? That's number one. Are you okay with that? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I don't know. Number two, are you okay with giving up the opportunity of hiring great talent at 1/4 of the cost, up to 1/4 of the cost? Some places 1/5, some places 1/3. I mean, you get the point. But it's a pretty significant cost difference. Number three, are you okay with a sort of a bifurcated culture, right? There's the in-office folks that are, tightly knit, and then there's the second-class citizens. I mean, the remote folks, right? Because end of the day, even if you're believing in office, you're gonna have some people working remote. Is my assumption, right? Some people are gonna be either moved away and you want to keep them, or whatever the different situations are. And let's all face it: when you're heavily in office cultures, the people that are working remotely will never be integrated, right? Because you're built for in office culture. Don't try to pretend, oh, no, we do what we can for remote folks to be engaged and blah, 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 blah. I mean, you're going to do Zoom calls anyway then at that point, right? So like you really have to ask yourself the honest questions. Do you believe these remote folks are as integrated or as close to integrated as possible from a culture standpoint with the folks inside the office? Number four, average commute time is roughly, with the cities probably, I think I read 40 minutes commute times each way. 40 minutes commuting time each way. Are you okay? So that translates into, are you okay with giving up 2 hours of productivity time, right? Maybe it's not productivity time. Maybe it's 2 hours of family time, right? Maybe they're not going to use it for the office. But either way, The fact that you're recapturing that 2 hours for the employee or the employer, whichever, however you want to look at it, are you okay giving it? And why I say, by the way, why I said 2 hours, not 40 minutes of waits. I mean, it's by the time parking the car, you're going up, whatever. There's tons of things. Getting ready, deciding, trying to find what clothes to wear so that you look decent. I mean, you still need to look decent in Zoom, but let's all face it, we care less, right? We care far less of how we look. Who knows what you're wearing underneath, or if you're wearing anything at all. But anyway, let's keep this PG. Add up all that. That's like very easily, in my opinion, 1 hour each way. Probably on average is 2 hours. And I know that seems a huge number. I'm inflating it. I'm not, right? I'm not at all inflating it. By the time you add up all those other minutes, other ancillary minutes, parking to whatever it is, it becomes almost 2 hours per day. That also translates to, are you okay with giving up better work-life balance for employees, right? So these are all the major, major questions that you have to ask yourself. Truly, are you willing to give these things up, right? That's what you have to ask yourself in office. Ignore what everybody else is doing, right? They're in very different situations, very different cultures, and so on. So you might be asking yourself, oh, yeah, Vijay, you're already sounding like you're very, very pro remote. Like you're not even discussing the disadvantages. Let's talk about the disadvantages. Disadvantages. This is my favorite one, by the way. Bugs the hell out of me. So, I'm unable to oversee productivity. I'm going to say something controversial here. Dare I say, stop focusing on productivity. Yes, I said it. Stop focusing on productivity. Focus on results. That's the only thing you should be worried about, right? Results. Yes, it will show from a productivity standpoint. You will have a very good feeling of productivity. But, I remember when the COVID happened, the very first, ton of articles about how productivity has increased. And then a year later, it turns out the productivity has decreased. And a year later, it's net zero. It's like, for every opinions that we have in our heads already, or every conclusions we have in our heads already, we just look for articles to support that, right? So forget it. I have never worked. I mean, I would say for the last decade, in almost 25 plus years of experience, I never worried about people coming to the office or not, even before COVID, right? I've never ever forced employees to come to the office. Don't care. I care about results. Everything else is secondary. How do you even measure productivity? That's a whole different topic altogether. And so number 2, culture, communication, collaborations. Yeah, that is a disadvantage where you have to do 20% more lift in remote environment, right? To make sure that everybody's collaborating, the communication's there, everybody's in sync. Communication is a huge important thing. By the way, if you have a problem, like a huge communication gap remote, you probably had the similar problem, not as bad, I know. So remote work is certainly an amplifier. I get it, right? But you had the problem before anyway, because if you have the leaders really focus on this, it wouldn't have compounded even into a bigger problem in a remote environment. If you ask me, the ship has sailed, right? You're not going to attract great talent, right? If you're just going to be focused on hiring in your zip code, that ship has sailed. Great talents are everywhere in the world. Don't sell yourself too short. Another disadvantage or the argument against it is Zoom fatigue, right? We've heard this like every other headline. Zoom fatigue and people are burning out and so on and so forth. First of all, we as leaders, we're not their parents, right? We're not their parents. We want to be empathetic. We want to help. Of course, we want to have a fostering, the culture of kindness. I get all that. I mean, that's what, but we're not, let's not try to be a parent, right? We have to enable them to discover this and manage it themselves, right? Yeah, you just focus on the results, keep an eye on the burnout. I totally get it, right? And then you got to adjust accordingly, but and help them figure it out. But other than that, they've got to figure out how to manage their time between the family and their essentially their home office, if you will, because this is just an adjustment period that humans are going through, including myself, by the way. I catch myself after 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Oh my God, I haven't got out of the got out of my home for a while. So it adjusts. Now you get the hang of it. You understand where your own flaws are. Everybody's different. This is why I hate when companies come out with some random standardized rule for everybody, because it hits everybody very differently. For one, some of the people are going to love it, some of the people are going to hate it, and you're going to have a turnover. It's like not a win-win situation. So you want to optimize for maximum flexibility and kind of empower the people to figure things out for themselves, and help them figure it out for themselves, right? This is where hiring the right leader is going to be super, super important, especially in a remote environment. So, and Zoom fatigue, oh my God, like that's just so annoying to me. So, in my opinion, right, is there a factor where face to face versus me being on Zoom and having one on one, is there a difference? Of course, there is a difference, massive difference. So the fatigue, I think, what comes from, in my opinion, I don't see a lot of people talking about this. If not, I don't think I've read a single article talk about this. It is not because how much time you're spending on Zoom that makes you burn out or makes you fatigue. It's the latency, it's the audio and the video latency between the two back and forth is what requires us to have just utilize more brain power to be in sync. I hope that makes sense. So naturally, when I'm talking to somebody in front of, it's real time, right? It's real time, right? It's back and forth, and half middle of the sentence I can say in a small noise, and they'll stop talking, and then I can respond, right? I can just jump in if I back and forth. So there's the back and forth, stopping yourself from talking and so on. But the fact that in Zoom you're talking to another person and you want to interrupt, there's like a, I don't know, 500 milliseconds to a second delay by the time they hear it and you stop talking. So that delay gets all weird, right? We're not used to that. It takes an extra cognitive power for us to keep like trying to synchronize between that. So technology is not quite there yet. I think it's going to catch up. It is catching up already. So I think there's all of the silly arguments. I mean, because it is slightly more painful. I get it, right? It's going to go away once the technology and the tools have caught up. This is my friends make fun of me when I talk about this. Like, something like in a like the VR headset. Eventually, the glasses are going to be this small. Hopefully, right? Hopefully, very sooner than later. And then you're going to put it on, and there's going to be no difference, right, between you sitting in the office and you're at home. It's up to the employer. So you're going to have 3D audio. You're going to have, hopefully very low latency, and somebody sitting right next to you, just like they would in the office. So it's not going to be even a question about it. So we're going to get there, but yes, today it's not there. We're going to have to get used to it. Until then, we're going to have to make do with the tools that we have today. But I think it's worth the pain, because the advantage you're getting is orders of magnitude outweigh, in my opinion, outweigh the disadvantages. But if you don't focus on some of these things I'm going to talk about here real quick, then it's going to be a disaster. What are the sort of the three things you really need to focus on to be successful in a remote environment? Number one, I call this leadership operating systems. Everything's going to depend on your leaders across the board, right? This is from the leads to the executives, right? Every single person that even remotely has a leadership type role has to be on the same page. So your leadership organization, you have to make sure that you hire the right leaders, not just IQ but the EQ as well. So and they recognize the culture is important, and they're constantly focused on it. Make them over communicate, over collaborative, or over collaborate with the team across. So I think it's super important that your leadership across the board are very well aware of this gap of losing touch with their team. It's extremely important. So if you get that right, Oh my God, it's going to make a biggest difference. So, communication, collaboration, those are two things you absolutely need to focus on. Come up with a framework that are not really too rigid, but still very flexible to bring out the best in people, but not, and it doesn't get just sort of, um, so that so that it doesn't get forgotten and everything just decays over time. And that's what you want to find. Number two, in tools and technology, like invest in them, right? You're going to save a ton of money in office space. Invest in some of the tools and don't even think twice. Try it out, right? Try it out. And the good news is a lot of people are going through this process, so you're going to learn through looking at the market, and market is going to tell you which ones are working, which ones are not. Laptops cannot be slow, for example, right? Replace their whatever they need to replace on at home, their laptops, or get the monitors, whatever it is, because it's well worth the investment. So tools, and by the way, the tools are going to get better. So you've got to keep an eye on it. Third, focus on results. Leave everything else, right? Forget everything else. Focus on results, because if you mess up on any one of these things, it's going to show up in the results, right? So results, results, results. And the reason I go back to that is we get so carried away with all these little different topics, and next thing you know, you completely forgot what you're trying to do as a business, right? What are you trying to solve in the market? What is the product trying to do? So that's why I'm so adamant about, like, when we, oh, productivity, how do we measure this? Like, forget all that. Focus on results. Make your leaders focus on results empathetically, right? Coaching employees. So that's what's gonna end up. It's gonna make the biggest difference. Now, this sounds all great, and all of this sounds great, but who owns this, right? Because we all talk about these, great ideas, but and we all know, as soon as we get back to work, we have a deadline, everybody forgets exactly what we just talked about, right? Which is very natural. So this is one of the reasons why I think one of the sort of the most critical function now in a remote environment is, what we call like the chief people officer. Somebody needs to own this and be on top of me as a CTO and CEO and so on, because their sole owner is the fluidity of the business, the running that leadership operating system, if you will. So you have to have a chief people officer, not just running HR administrative. That's just one part of it, right? But this is one of the most important things, that you as a business, who is your chief people officer, whatever the title is going to be, but that their sole focus is this. I think this is one of the most important roles, in my opinion, and in now and in the future, because of the advent of all this remote working employees, and that couple, and plus, there's the culture differences, and you have a team in India or Vietnam or China, whatever the case is. There's all these cultures, so somebody needs to sort of focus on these dynamics and figure out, what can I do to help the organization work better across the board, without creating a bunch of stupid rules that everybody's going to hate. So that's the key, right? Everybody thinks they have a solution, but it's all about being as flexible as possible with individualized needs, and then enhancing their strengths and sort of mitigating some of their weaknesses individually, right? Because everybody's different. Keep that in mind. Last but not least, meet up once a quarter, right? Quarter, monthly, yearly. I'll leave it up to you. But generally, you should meet. So I would say minimum, you should be meeting every 6 months. It's a little too long, but again, I'm not a fan of rules, right? I'm not a fan of saying one statement, everybody should follow this. Think for yourself. You will know. Depends on the team size, depends on the type of the team, depends on the time zone differences, and so on. There's so many dependencies. Figure it out, right? But if you have not met more than 6 months, I don't see any situations where like once a year is too little, I think. So once in 6 months minimum, probably once in a quarter, anywhere between once a quarter and once in 6 months. But if you do the remote thing well and the tools are getting better and you're able to do that, I think you can meet less. I'm going to say it. You can meet less because you're talking every day, right? Every other day, whatever the case is. So if that's very effective and the telepresence is there, that's another whole episode I can do, talk about that. I think you can adjust based on that, right? Hope that's helpful. Like, subscribe. Till next time. Ciao.